Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Browns organized team activities underway. There will be media availability tomorrow with the OTAs. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Deshaun Watson threw today in OTAs, not scheduled to throw tomorrow when it's open to the media. That is part of his rehab plan. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Mary Kay, take us through what you found out, what you know.
Well, I've been writing for a couple of days now that Deshaun Watson was going to be on a pitch count, that he's going to be playing it somewhat conservatively during these OTAs, which span the next 3 weeks, 9 practices over the next 3 weeks, leading into the mandatory minicamp June 11th through the 13th. I've been writing that he was going to play it slow a little bit at the behest of his surgeon, Dr. Neil Elatrosh. And that, in fact, is playing out that way. He threw today on the first day of OTAs, closed to the media. We are only out there each of the next 3 Wednesdays. 9 practices. We get to watch 3 of them on Wednesdays. Unless Deshaun is going to throw next Tuesday, then they will invite us out on Tuesday so we can actually witness him throwing. But as of right now, we won't get to see that tomorrow. That's the way that it's supposed to be. He's not scheduled to throw tomorrow, let me say. And then, we'll just have to see a lot of Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley for right now.
I know you also wrote an article. What do we expect? And you just touched on it with Deshaun Watson, but there's also Nick Chubb, Jack Conklin, and a lot of other guys that you're kind of curious to see what they are getting ready to do in the OTAs.
Well, starting with Nick Chubb, he's not going to be doing anything in these OTAs. He's not going to be doing anything in minicamp. They want to get him to training camp and then start ramping him up there and see how he's doing and see how he's ready to go. He's been running. He's been working out to a degree, but really not ready to join practice just yet. The goal is to have him play at some point this season, and there is no need to rush him right now. Jack Conklin, he's also probably not going to participate in these OTAs. He's only 8 months out of ACL, MCL surgery, so he needs some extra time. We will not see him. That will give DeJuan Jones and Jed Wills an opportunity to continue to take all those first-team reps there at right and left tackle. And those are some of the guys. And Joel Bitonio, he probably won't be here because he doesn't usually come to OTAs. He saves it for training camp and mandatory minicamp and takes advantage of the time off with his family and whatnot during the OTAs.
So we've talked a little bit about the schedule and, with it being released. Deshaun Watson on his QB Unplugged podcast with Quincy Carrier, his quarterback coach, talked about how he views it and what he does when the schedule gets released.
For me personally, I break down, okay, these are the teams where we're playing at, the environments we're going to be in, and then the type of coordinators I'm going to be going against. And you get the schedule. You see the primetime games for sure. You know what I'm saying? That's definitely number one. So if I had to rewind back, I say primetime games. All right, cool. Who the primetime game? How many Thursday nights, Sunday nights, Friday, Monday nights we got? Mm-hmm. And then, okay, who got the Christmas game? All right, who got the Thanksgiving game? You look at the holiday games. And then you kind of fill in of what I was just saying. Like, all right, boom, you got the opener. All right, then you start really kind of get into the books and the studies of it. Now it's like, all right, what coordinators we're going against? Like for us, we have the whole NFC East in our first, I think, 5 games, or first 6 games. So they're off our schedule halfway, not even halfway through. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of break that up too. The different comment. Do we have to travel West Coast? Do we have to, or is it, all right, cool. Is it 3 games back to back where we on the road and 3 games at home? Okay, that's a big difference too. Okay, we got a Thursday night game, I think late in the year, and then we got a Monday night game. So like we get an extended break. So we get that whole weekend, a whole another week, and an extra day. You know what I'm saying? So like that's a good time for the team to be able to rest, and plan out, okay, cool, around this time, like this is what I need to get done.
And Mary Kay, it makes sense. They're trying to figure out what portion of the schedule is going to put stress on the player's body with short work weeks. So that I guess that makes sense with what he's saying.
It does make plenty of sense with what he's saying, but I think the key is when I look at that last 7 games of the season, it is absolutely brutal. 4 division games, the Kansas City Chiefs coming to town, 4 games in prime time in those last 7, which the intensity is always higher for those primetime games. And then you do have some issues with the shorter weeks and the Thursday night games. So I think it's going to be really tough. They're going to have to be very mentally tough to get through that grueling stretch, and they're going to have to be very, very healthy to get through that.
Yeah, and everybody in the AFC North, the reason they put all those games at the end, they expect the AFC North to be what it's been the last couple of years. It's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to take place in the national spotlight because the NFL has so many of those games in prime time. I know you've addressed this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. What do you think we'll learn about the new offense at OTAs?
I think we'll be able to see some things. I think that we'll be able to see that they're going to use more 3 wides, more spread, more 4 wides. There's no way you can hide that during these practices from the media. But, so I think we're going to really be able to see some of the new things that Ken Dorsey is implementing in this offense. Now, they'll try to keep plenty under wraps, but you will get sort of a taste or a flavor of the new scheme, and really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to hide the nuances of it. You don't want to hide what it is. So how long do you think? What do you think it looks like, and how long is there going to be an adjustment period to Ken Dorsey's this new offense? Do you think?
Well, there will be, because they're learning new terminology, and everything will be quite new. But one thing I think they will have going in their favor is the fact that Deshaun Watson ran this offense in Houston under Bill O'Brien. And so it's like old hat to him. He's going to know exactly what to do. And he and Ken Dorsey will be speaking the very same language. And I think that's going to help a lot. I think Deshaun and his people probably had some input in the fact that, hey, we need to be running something a little bit more similar to what he had so much success with in Houston when he made those 3 Pro Bowls. I don't know that for sure, but I would have to think that there was some discussion about that. So that's what Ken Dorsey is bringing to the table. Again, some spread, 3 wides, maybe not as many 2 and 3 tight end sets, maybe not as much of a wide zone running game, maybe sort of a mid-zone running game. And they'll still focus on the run. That's, this is the AFC North. This is Cleveland. Weather is still an issue. The run can still very much complement the pass, and they've got the horses to run it. So I think these are some of the things that you'll see.
We heard Deshaun Watson again. Does it seem to you he just seems much more comfortable, much more at ease with the whole situation here?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair to say. The shoulder injury is behind him now. I think once you get out there and you start throwing and you see that the ball looks great coming out of your hand and it's going where it's supposed to go, and you feel really good, and you know the offense, and you really like your new offensive coordinator, and you love your new receiver in Judy, I think there are many reasons for him to be very positive and optimistic, and I think he's super, super excited. So we'll have to see how it goes. Nobody knows how this whole thing is going to go, but I hear great, great things about how he looks so far. And the people that I talk to do not seem concerned that this shoulder is going to be an issue this season.
So the other thing, we know there is a new wide receiver that the Browns have brought in, a young guy. You tweeted this out. They've signed Matt Landers, signed with the Seahawks as an undrafted free agent 2023, spent time on the Seahawks-Panthers practice squads last year, time with Arlington and San Antonio in the UFL earlier this season. So again, a young guy, just bringing him in to see, is that what, this just a young guy to see what he has, basically?
Exactly. Yes. This is an opportunity to be able to do that at this time of year. You bring someone in, see if they have a chance to stick around, or a chance to maybe be on your practice squad, and someone that you can develop. So he's got the traits that they're looking for. And that's the key right now. Anybody that they bring in has the traits that the coaches are seeking. So that's excellent separation, really good hands, really good route running, a really high football acumen where you can make very quick decisions. And these are things that he has displayed.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
How you guys doing? This is Keith, a multiple-time caller. So this is my gripe today. I understand from a national perspective, but as a fan base, they keep talking about Deshaun and these stat numbers and this, that, and the third. At the end of the night, I can care less if he throws for 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. All I care about is dubs and L's. And what he has shown when he is healthy and playing is that he wins games. He was 5-1 last year. Why is everybody in the Cleveland media so caught up in these stats? So he puts up godly stats, but then he has a losing record. Would you rather him put up mediocre stats and we win games? Make it make sense to me. Thank you guys for taking my call. Go Dog Pound. Woo!
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, it goes back to the contract and all that. I'm with them, though. The one thing, the reason you bring in a guy like Deshaun Watson is that Baltimore Ravens game is a perfect example of why. Give him the ball in the fourth quarter, say, find a way to win the game. And he did. That's what you want a guy like him to do.
Yes, and he's going to have to do that a lot more, and especially in that home stretch. He is playing almost every great quarterback in the NFL this season. There are very few that he's missing, and he's going to have to go head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Tua and Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and it goes on and on and on. It's a very, very difficult season from a quarterback standpoint, and I think this does go to show you, if you don't have a quarterback like that, you're not going to win those games. The Browns wanted a chance to be able to keep pace with the Patrick Mahomes of the world, and they feel they have one in Deshaun. It's been a long time since he's been able to prove it. It's a long time since he's played a full season in 2020. So he's got a lot on his plate, and he's coming off of an injury that no other NFL player that I know of has come off of, at least not in modern times. So he's got a lot to prove, but they believe he can do it.
So this is from PFF, Pro Football Focus, NFL wide receiver rankings for the 2024 season. They go Justin Jefferson 1, Tyreek Hill 2, Jamar Chase 3. I can't argue with that. What I do find really interesting, 17, DeAndre Hopkins, 18, Terry McLaurin, 19, Amari Cooper, 20, Mike Evans. Perennially underrated, Cooper makes every offense he plays better. Last season averaged 2.31 yards per route run, caught 51% of his contested targets, and averaged 17.4 yards per catch. Why is he ranked 18th then? Or 19th then? This is a guy that just seems to always be, if you watch Amari Cooper week in and week out, there's an appreciation that I think he gets overlooked. He's one of the better receivers in the league.
Yeah, 19 seems low to me. Amari is amazing, and he's bounced around to so many different teams and has gotten traded a few times to the point where people do forget about him, and he does fly under the radar. All you have to do, though, is look to that Texans game last year where he caught for 200 some yards and was just amazing with Joe Flacco. He's so good at what he does. I'm very impressed with him. He was a Pro Bowler again last year, and I just don't think that ranking is high enough for him.
I know you've written an article, or actually this is from a Hey Mary Kay. Any word on a possible extension for Cooper? Is that still kind of nothing being talked about?
I don't think it's on the absolute front burner right now, but you never know. Things can get done in that break between mini camp and training camp. So maybe they have something in mind there. Maybe they want to get into the season a little bit. But like I said, and I wrote this after the NFL annual meetings, that Andrew Berry said that's the kind of guy that you want to keep around. So I surmised that perhaps they do want to extend him. we'll have to see how it plays out. Maybe they want to see how the beginning part of the season goes, to let him sort of see what the market will bear or what the price will be. I'm not really sure where it's going to go. I don't think anything is imminent.
So this is from the Bleacher Report. NFL players primed to be a major bounce back from injury in 2024. They go with Nick Chubb. May take some time for Chubb to ramp back up to full strength, but the Browns can afford to be patient with the 6-year veteran. The offense boasts a strong backfield platoon that will likely open the year with Jerome Ford as a starter, Nyheim Hines, and Deontay Foreman providing depth. I don't know that the numbers for Nick Chubb are going to be gaudy, because I think they want to make sure when they bring Nick Chubb back, and do you agree with this, that he's back full strength at the critical time of the season for them?
Yeah, they don't want to rush him back by any stretch of the imagination, and they have a really good running game and a really good offensive line. So you can plug some good running backs back there and operate it by committee, and you're going to be able to accomplish your running game. You've got guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. You've got guys with amazing and excellent speed, which they're going to need and utilize. They have what they need. They've got some power. They've got some speed. They've got some hands. They can do what they need to do until Nick Chubb is fully ready to come back. They can give him the time that he needs. People need to give him the grace that he needs in terms of coming back from his second major reconstruction of that left knee. And expectations should be tempered a little bit, I think.
All right. Before we go to break, I know you wrote an article, 2024 schedule. What part of it do you think is the most important when you look at it overall?
I mentioned it a little bit already. Those final 7 games that include 4 AFC North foes, 4 primetime games, Kansas City Chiefs coming to town, night games, short weeks. It's really difficult. It's going to be a really, really tough schedule, and finishing against the Baltimore Ravens. So you've got Patrick in there. You've got Lamar Jackson in there to end the season, depending on who's resting and how things go. But it's really grueling. It's really tough. And I think they're going to have to pace themselves. I think you really want Myles Garrett to finish the season strong. And that means you're going to have to make sure that he's getting the rest he needs during the year and having the time he needs to make sure that he doesn't end up with a 1-for-6 sack slump like he did last year. Again, he was still getting the pressures. He was still being disruptive, and he was still on track for winning NFL Defensive Player of the Year. But you want him to finish strong. You want him to be able to make those impact plays all the way down the stretch and into the playoffs. That's important. You want to make sure that Amari is still healthy for all of that. You want to make sure that Deshaun is. So it's just the toughest part of the schedule in my mind.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll continue to talk Browns. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. This from PFF's NFL show. Steve Palazzolo with the ceiling for the Browns in 2024.
Cleveland Browns were righting all sorts of wrongs, historical wrongs this year with a Super Bowl run. Now I'm just declaring Super Bowl for everybody.
For everybody.
Yeah. Watson's back to 2020 form this year, right? He's healthy. He's not dealing with the pesky shoulder from last year. Don't forget about the pesky shoulder. That was a big issue. Healthy Deshaun Watson, best roster in football, to the moon. Cleveland Browns.
Easy.
What level of optimism is that?
I mean, 4? It's a really good team.
Yeah. I think the whole AFC North should be really optimistic.
Mary Kay, when you think about it, if Deshaun Watson is healthy, the thing that gets overlooked, he wasn't able to play 4 games in a row last year. That's when you're in and you're out, there's no rhythm, especially when you're 11 guys in an offense that you're just trying to get together. If he can stay healthy, they should have high expectations.
Yes, that's going to be the whole key, is to make sure that that they can keep him healthy and see how that goes. And that's why they are playing it conservatively right now in OTAs. So I think it's the right move to slow play it like this. And if he does stay healthy, we'll see. I still think he can be the quarterback that he was. A lot of people don't believe that, but I do. I believe that he can be that guy. I've seen it in practice. I saw it in the Baltimore Ravens game. I've seen other flashes of it, and I don't think he's forgotten how to play football. Now we're going to see him back in that Bill O'Brien offense that he flourished in, and I think he should probably have a really nice season if the shoulder cooperates.
So I know you also wrote an article about the beginning part of the schedule, and it's not like you can ease into it if you're Deshaun Watson. Take us through that and kind of the thought process there.
Yeah, I mean, they do have to get off to a nice, strong start because they're playing the Cowboys in week 1. And the Cowboys are really strong, both offensively and defensively. And Deshaun Watson is going up against Dak Prescott, who is obviously an excellent quarterback. He finished 3rd in the NFL in several key categories, including yards, rating, completion percentage. So you've got that, and then you've got a really, really excellent defense. Micah Parsons, they're going to bring the heat. And it's going to be a tough game. It's all eyes of the nation will be on the Cleveland Browns that day. Tom Brady is on the call, and Deshaun Watson will be playing for the first time since November 12th last season, when he injured himself against the Baltimore Ravens. So that's a long time, and it's almost a year. So it's going to be tough, and he's got to be ready to go. And so they have to strike that balance between keeping him healthy, ramping him up, and also having him ready to go on September 8th.
Yeah, and we've already talked about how that final 7 weeks is brutal. So you better get winnable game. The games that are winnable early in the year, they become even more magnified.
Absolutely. I mean, there are some relatively easier games in the early part of the schedule that they're just going to have to win. They're going to have to come out of that first 5-6 games with a really, really nice record so that they can have a little padding for that home stretch in case things don't go as hoped, and maybe a game or two along the way. And we know that one game, one loss can mean the difference between going to the playoffs or not going to the playoffs. Last year, it could have been something as simple as Jake Moody making the kick when the San Francisco 49ers were here. Would they have made the playoffs had they not won that game? It's hard to say. That's how razor thin the margins are. So they've got to do everything that they can to win as many of those sort of easier games in a year when they've got the toughest schedule in the NFL.
All right, this from Clutch Points. 3 free agents the Browns must target, and get your thoughts on these. Linebacker Quan Alexander has had a solid season for the Steelers last year before suffering season-ending Achilles injury. Type of dependable player who can step up in a pinch, could even challenge Devin Bush for a starting role. Edge rusher Yannick Ngakoue. Ngakoue, a career-low 4 sacks with the Bears last season, but averaged better than 9 sacks per year over his previous 7 seasons in the NFL. He is good enough to be a starter, but in Cleveland, he would be a key rotational player, still receiving significant reps. Wide receiver Mecole Hardman, David Njoku, Elijah Moore as the underneath options, Amari Cooper, Jerry Judy, more downfield targets. Hardman's straight line speed opens up a world of possibilities for Deshaun Watson. So those are 3 names that are thrown out there. Do any of those make sense to you for the Browns?
I've long thought that they should add Yannick Ngakoue because I think that another potential double-digit sacker would be good for this team. And his pass rush win rate hasn't always been right up at the top, but he gets those sacks. And I think the sacks are important. But I don't think the Browns have that in mind at all. I think they're pretty happy with what they have. I think you may have seen that Obo said the other day that he wants double-digit sacks. He said that last year too. So I think he's really going to be trying to play with his hair on fire to get those sacks. I think Z, speaking with hair on fire, cut off all of his hair, and we'll be talking to him tomorrow. And so maybe he's got a renewed sense of vigor coming in to these OTAs and to this preseason. So I think that, I think they're probably okay. Quan Alexander, I think they're okay in the linebacker room. I think they feel pretty good about what they have on the roster overall.
When you look at the defense, we've talked about how the offense has changed, or how we expect it to change. Second year in Jim Schwartz's system, I know there's a challenge. What do you think that there's a little bit more familiarity and they can do some different things? It's almost like the 200 level courses of Jim Schwartz defense now.
Yeah, they should be able to do that. And they're getting a lot of guys back healthy from injuries. And they also have a new defensive line coach. So there will be a little bit of a new vibe and philosophy there up front. But for the most part, yes, they will be building on the things that they learned last year in Jim Schwartz's defense and being able to grow and build from there.
Before I let you go, so relative to the schedule, when you look at it, and again, this is from one of your Hey Mary K's, you look at this year's schedule compares to last year's schedule. Just your thoughts on it.
When the schedule first came out last year, I thought it was going to be pretty tough, even though it wasn't ranked that way in terms of strength of schedule based on the win totals from the previous year. But when I looked at it and I saw 3 AFC North games in the first 4 weeks and then a bye in week 5, I thought that was a very, very difficult way to get started. And then when you kept looking at the rest of the schedule, you saw guys on there like Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow and other guys like that didn't end up playing those games. You saw Trevor Lawrence, you thought he was going to be healthy. And it just didn't turn out that way. Trevor Lawrence ended up playing on a high ankle sprain, suffered only 6 days before the Browns played him and beat him. Trevor Siemian played instead of Aaron Rodgers. Clayton Tune, a rookie, played instead of Kyler Murray. Joe Burrow in the opener wasn't healthy at all. So what looked to be an incredibly difficult schedule at the beginning, at the outset, turned out not to be that. So I certainly didn't look at it when it first came out and said, oh, this is a walk in the cake, as Butch Davis would have said. I thought it was going to be pretty tough. Turned out to be easier. They should only be so lucky to have it happen that way this year, because it really is a gauntlet of great NFL quarterbacks.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Mary Kay.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Great Browns coverage in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. As she said, media availability for the OTAs tomorrow, so make sure you check out the coverage of the Browns with Mary Kay Cabot. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports 4 CLE. Mary Kay Cabot earlier told us Deshaun Watson was out throwing at OTAs today. Well, here is some proof from the Browns as Watson going through OTAs, not open to the media. The Browns website, the team posted this, so we get a good look at Watson kind of going through things and throwing the football, which is a really, really good sight. Again, Browns on Instagram posting Deshaun Watson throwing the football first day of OTAs. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, that's a good sign. Step one.
Yeah, and everybody's going to be focused on the zip of his passes. I like the biomechanics. I'm looking at his throwing motion. Everything looks smooth. Everything doesn't look labored. You know, I think that's the first thing you want to see when a guy comes back from injury. How effortless does his throw look? To me, that looked pretty good.
Yeah, you know, looks like Deshaun Watson. All right, this from PFF's NFL show, Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. Reasons for optimism this season for the Browns.
This is the best roster in football, and the quarterback at the helm of it has proven quality play in his past.
Well said.
Thank you.
We took a quarterback who was sitting on the couch like you and I, and we brought him to the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco.
Right.
That's how good the Cleveland Browns roster is. The offensive line, the run game, the playmakers, Kevin Stefanski. Revolving door of quarterbacks last year. Still a playoff team. That's how good this roster is. The defensive line, Jim Schwartz, everything that they did. Now, full year of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and part of the problem, you know, with Deshaun Watson thus far has been this, you know, air of negativity in the building. But we fixed that by bringing in Jameis Winston, who is the king of positive vibes. So we've completely transformed the whole situation.
We're going to be eating W's like crazy next year.
That's it.
Eating W's.
Uh-huh.
So, Casey, I like Sam Monson. I respect his work without question. There's no air of negativity. If anything, it's 180 degrees from that. His teammates loved Deshaun Watson. I don't know where that came from.
I'm with you. I respect Monson and what they do at PFF, but this is just an extension of the Watson tax. They want Watson to be this albatross, this anchor that's holding the team back. But it's just, and I believe it's like lazy analysis, but at the same time, it's fair game. It's offseason. There's not much to talk about. So that's going to be the talking point. Expect more of it until he either proves himself one way or the other. But I can't ignore what I saw. Even though he wasn't lighting the world on fire, they were 4-1 in games that he started and finished. I think that you see the path. You know, you see the path. Even if he doesn't start off on fire, this team is built, just like they said, it's one of the very best rosters in the NFL. And unless he completely implodes, this team will be a double-digit win team.
Yeah, the other thing, they brought Jameis Winston in not because of the air of positivity. It's because of the offense they're going to run. They're going to run a more wide-open offense, and his skill set matches that offense even better than Joe Flacco's. But we'll see. That's something that we believe through the analysis of who they brought in. We'll see if that's correct or not. All right, 3 things to watch during OTAs. This is from Dogs by Nature. Deshaun Watson's activity level. We've seen he's thrown the football, so that's a good thing. Wide receiver pecking order, and how Nathaniel Watson, so that's the linebacker they drafted out of Mississippi State, how he performs in coverage. Important to note, Watson threw today. He's not going to throw tomorrow. They're going to be very measured and conservative, but he will throw.
Yeah, and that's the activity level. People are going to be paying attention, but I think that's also part of the plan. They're going to get him back. They're going to work him in. They're going to ramp him up. He's not going to throw him back-to-back days at all during OTAs and probably in the beginning of minicamp. They're just going to implement it slowly and ramp it up so that he's ready by the season. Now, if we get into the season and we're in week 3 and he has to take back-to-back days off, then it's time to worry. Right now, to me, it's just part of the plan. The wide receiver pecking order, I think that's exciting. You know, this is a very deep wide receiver room all of a sudden, and you just look at the possibilities. I think that the top 3 kind of come into this portion and just locked in with Amari Cooper, Jerry Judy, and Elijah Moore. But there, Cedric Tillman could upset an apple cart. He could come in and prove that he's really ready to take that step, give them a bigger body, a deeper threat with boundary type of skills. But then Jamari Thrash is also there. What is he ready for as a rookie? But there's also a name that like Michael Woods. If Michael Woods comes into this healthy and really making plays, I think he could force an issue and maybe kick one of these guys off the roster.
Those are all issues that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry would love. Too many good players, much better than the problems we've had years past. Yeah. What are you paying attention to? What really will grab your attention at OTAs?
The boring stuff. They're implementing a new offense, so I'm looking at the cohesion. I'm looking at because at the bottom line, like, coaching is teaching. And this is the coach's first opportunity to implement this offense to the players and how seamless things can be. Can you be efficient? Can you not spend time having to rework splits and everyone come be on the same page? But there's also another issue is when Dorsey was in Buffalo, he had a ton of like baked in coverage beaters in his offense, which I don't think they'll implement that right away, but that's something that I'll be watching for. When they get to that point where when a receiver can change his route depending on the defense and the quarterback sees it the same way, when they start hitting on those, then I'll know that this offense is hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, then it could get scary as well. That's the whole idea behind those. This is from NFL.com. The most vulnerable division champs entering the 2024 season. 1A, they say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 1B, the Dallas Cowboys. 3, the Bills. And 4, the Ravens. Browns went to the playoffs using a revolving door at backup quarterback. If Watson can finally look consistently like the quarterback the Browns thought they were trading for him, division will be a dogfight from beginning to end. I think it's be a dogfight from beginning to end either way. I wouldn't push the Bengals out of that. And if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields figure it out with Arthur Smith, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's why the Ravens have to be high on this list. Just how the margin of error in the AFC North is so slim. Every team's ultra competitive, and they match up well against each other. It's going to be like a last man standing. It's the blood and guts division of the NFL. And even though the Ravens were up to the challenge last year, they have a ton of moving parts. Their offensive line's being reshuffled, and they do have an eraser quarterback. Even if you get a free release on him, he can still make plays. But I think that's the differentiating factor is every defensive line in this division is stacked. So for them to be moving some pieces around on the offensive line, that should make them a little uneasy about their stature in the division.
Yeah, without question. The division, so I've been getting people who are kind of emailing me, and I said I could understand. I didn't say I agreed. I said I could understand somebody that said the Browns would go 9-8. I think they'll be better. I think they'll be 10-7, maybe 11-6. With this division, there's no margin for error. That's why you lose a game where you just don't play like you should. You could end up with 9 wins in this division.
Well, that's why no matter what, no matter who your outside teams are, when you play in this division, you're going to have one of the harder strengths of schedules because there's no layups in your division. You don't get to play some Sisters of the Poor twice a year. Everyone, it's whoever goes 4-2 is probably winning the division, if that tells you anything about the status of the AFC North.
Yeah, without question. Nobody goes unbeaten in this division, and very few teams have 5 wins in it. This one will break your heart. Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins has not signed his franchise tender, not expected to by next week per the source. This would make him ineligible to report next to the Bengals in time for their OTAs next week. Higgins cannot rejoin the team until he signs the tender. Bengals OTAs start May 28th. He's upset because they have not talked at all, according to him, about a long-term contract, which leads you to believe they probably aren't going to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this game of chicken plays out. But if you just look at what they have in the receiver room with Jamar Chase coming up, I think that all their eggs are going to be in that basket, which will leave T. Higgins as the odd man out. So at the end of the day, I think he plays. But I don't think he's going to come early. I don't think he's going to be happy about it. And it probably doesn't happen during OTAs. And my guess is it'll be into camp and he'll show up and he'll play. But unless someone comes knocking with a crazy offer to scoop them up this year, he's going to be a Bengal. He's going to play on the franchise tag. There's worse things in the world than making $15 million a year. But I understand he wants the long-term security, and I guarantee you after the season, some team will give him that.
Yeah, the other one, remember, Trey Hendrickson is another one, wants longer-term deals. So, breaks my heart to hear that the team down in Cincinnati, it's kind of like the Steelers having, that brutal end of the schedule, even worse than the Browns final one. I lose sleep for those Steelers and Bengals fans.
Yeah, I'm playing the world's smallest violin just for them.
Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, Barking Browns podcast, and I just step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll continue talking AFC North. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. This from CBS Sport. Win totals for every AFC North team, over-unders. So the Ravens, they have over-under 11.5. Bengals over-under is 10.5. Steelers over-under 8.5. Browns over-under is 8.5. Browns' struggles defensively on the road are a red flag for consistency in 2024. Browns drastically outperformed their win differential, went 6-2 in one-score games last year. They profile as a prime step-back team, especially if you don't want to believe in Watson finding his old Houston form. Will Brinson pick under 8.5. He also went over with the Ravens and Bengals. So Ravens over 11.5, Bengals over 10.5, and under with the Steelers at 8.5. Casey, I'd be surprised if they only win 8. So he's saying they're only going to win 8 games. That would surprise me. That there would have to be some significant regression. Here's the thing about their defense. Do you think Jim Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator? If you do, he's going to figure out a good portion of what ails them.
Yeah, I would hammer the over at 8.5. I view 9 wins as the basement of this team, which, that'd be disappointing if they were to go, 9-8. I think that's a disappointing season based on where this roster is at. We heard that first segment. PFF thinks this is the best roster in football. And to me, you see that they were 6-2 in one-score games, and that is an indicator of a team that's due for a setback. But I would also argue that was why they were decimated in injury. They were 6-2 in one-score games, and if they had anywhere close to the full complement of players, those probably aren't one-score games for the vast majority. So unless they experience a similar injury trajectory as they did last year, I think that by itself should raise the expectations for the win totals to be double digits. It's going to be the popular thing to doubt the Browns, and they're going to cite Watson as being the thing, and they're going to keep saying this Houston form. I think it's time to scrap all that. He's going to be a different version. This is a different offense. This is a different cast of characters. He doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting like he had to do in Houston because of the players he has around him. It's a team effort. I do, the road woes on defense, that was concerning, but they've had an entire offseason. And I have to trust that Mike Vrabel, being part of the coaching collective overseeing some of these things, is able to crack a code or two with Schwartz and figure out the reason they were coming off on slow starts and getting caught, on the back foot on the road. Because if they just tweak one or two things and this defense learns to travel, that's a scary proposition for opposing teams.
Well, if you want to point out that they're 6-2 in one-score games, I'm going to point out they were 8-1 at home. That's the sign of a really good team. You can't come into their place and win. Half of the games are at home.
Yep. Yep, they have that built-in factor, and hopefully they're able to keep that going because what the defense was able to do at home was absolutely stellar, and if they can keep that kind of momentum going and just you still 1 or 2 more games on the road, then I think no matter what, you're looking at minimum a 10 to 11 win team.
That's kind of the sweet spot that I have it at. I think when you look at the roster, I think it's better than a 10 or 11 win team. When you look at what they have to do to get to 10 or 11 wins, I think that's probably just it's a brutal schedule, really good quarterbacks that you're facing. So I think 10 or 11 is kind of where they're going to end up. And I think the same thing. I don't think there's any way anybody in the AFC North wins 12 games. I would be shocked.
Yeah, same here. Like you said, it's a brutal schedule, and it plays out different for each one. But the Browns have to stack a bunch of wins in the front half so that they can go in the back half. We've discussed how brutal the final 5 games are. So you got to just aim to be 3-2 when you get to that point, and trust that you've given yourself enough wins by the time you get to that portion. That 3-2 is enough to get you to the postseason.
So this is from the 33team.com. It's a former NFL personnel guys, some GMs, ranking the NFL's fastest 25 players. Number 1, they got a rookie, Xavier Worthy. Number 2, Tyreek Hill. Number 3, DK Metcalf, which is kind of frightening given his build. 20th, Denzel Ward. There aren't many cornerbacks in the league faster than Ward. At the 2018 NFL Combine, ran a 4.32 40. And his quickness is even more impressive. You tend to forget because he is a cornerback. Yeah. That's one of the things that they're paying him for. He's got the elite speed to hang with wide receivers.
Yeah, one thing I found funny about this list is you run your 40 at the Combine, and then no matter whatever you run, that's what you are for your career. They'll cite that. If you run 4.32, you're a 4.3 guy. And the truth of the matter is when you get 8-9 years in the league, you're probably still not a 4.3 guy. But in Denzel Ward's case, it's a little different because he doesn't appear to have lost a step. Right. He appears to still be just as quick as when he came in the league. and the long speed is impressive. But like what they pointed out there, which I think is apt, is how quick he is short area because his style of defense is playing that mirror technique. And he's not trying to race you. He's trying to be in your jersey. He's trying to stay sticky, stay step for step with you. But he still can flip the hips and really open it up and show that deep speed when he has to.
So this one from NFL Game Day, they tweet out 10 traded players who will have the biggest impact on their new teams. Stephon Diggs is 1. Keenan Allen is 2. Jerry Judy is the 3rd one. Keenan Allen's interesting. Keenan Allen, I realize he's going to the number 1 overall pick. At some point in time, he's got to slow down. That's a guy that's a little long in the tooth. Jerry Judy is like 6 months older, 8 months older than a couple of guys who were rookies last year. People tend to forget was a really, really young guy coming into the league.
Yeah, I think that just goes to show what the view is of Judy's athletic potential, that he's 3rd on this list, even though he really hasn't performed to the level of the 2 guys ahead of him, Diggs and Allen. That the belief is there that he has this untapped potential. Now, you could blame what he hasn't, his lack of consistency on schematics or bad quarterback play in Denver. Well, he's not really come to a team where the quarterback's been lighting it on fire, so to speak. So I don't expect some offensive explosion. But when you look at what this team already has with Amari Cooper as a bona fide wide receiver 1 and Njoku's a top flight tight end, I think that Judy could be super impactful with this cast of characters and not really have to light the world on fire, but just be that because he's kind of a mix because he's also a very good route runner like Cooper, but he's a little more twitched up. So I think they're going to use him, weaponize him, kind of move him around, use him as a coverage indicator. But he's someone that I expect to be very impactful this year. And I'm looking forward to see what this can do because this team has really assembled a bunch of separators. Cooper is naturally a separator because of his route running abilities. Judy has proven he could separate. Moore's the same way. So they've really got a bunch of these guys now, and it's going to be exciting to see if they can really open it up this year.
Think about the Texans when, and because we're saying that it's going to be similar to that Bill O'Brien offense. So you had Hopkins, you had a Brandon Cooks, you had Will Fuller. Judy's kind of going to be like a cross. He's got skills that would make him probably a little better than either of them, I would think. And I know Brandon Cooks is a pro, but I think Judy can be more of a weapon than either of those guys.
Yeah, because he has the size. I know he's slider frame, but he's longer. He knows how to accentuate. He can separate it at any level, and he can give you the deep speed even from the slot. And I know people when they think of a slot receiver, they think of that dink and dunk style football, but he can be a vertical threat from the slot. And when you already have Amari Cooper outside, across more what you get out of Njoku, there's just going to be all different levels of the field they can unlock by just moving him around and letting him use his speed.
Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. And now I can step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. NFL roster rankings from the Football Network. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. This from Football Network. NFL roster rankings excluding the quarterback position. They go 49ers 1, Browns 2, Lions 3, Jets 4, Chiefs 5, Dolphins, Bears, Eagles, Bengals, Texans round out the top 10. Browns roster strength and weaknesses. The strength, they say, is the offensive line. Weakness is the running back because of Chubb's injury. I don't know. The offensive line concerns me a little bit just because guys are a little bit older and all the top 3 tackles are coming off pretty significant injuries a season ago.
Yeah, I would agree. If you were to look at the starters, I get that. I would get that you would think that that's a very strong unit. What we saw is last year when you're down to tackles 5 and 6, their depth did not hold up throughout the year. So that's something that they've definitely addressed this offseason. I would also think that you could, at the same time, say the other side of the trenches would be their strength. I think their defensive line is more of the strength of this team than the offensive line at this point. I think they finally surpassed them. If I were to look at weaknesses, I would have tight end above running back because even though I agree, not having a certainty on Nick Chubb is something to be concerned about. I think that room's fine as is, even without Chubb. I think Deontay Foreman, Ford, Hines, maybe even Pierre Strong or Aiden Robbins, the kid they're bringing in. I think that's still a pretty strong room if you look across the league. I think that would stack up with most of them. Obviously if Chubb's healthy, it blows it out the water. But if I look at tight end, I understand that they're probably going to run a lot more 11 personnel they have in years past. But if Njoku's to sprain a high ankle sprain or a God forbid, a broken wrist like he had in 2019, I don't know what you're putting out there. So to me, tight end seems like a much bigger weakness to me.
Yeah, you could make a case that the secondary is the strength. You got the 3 cornerbacks, Grant Delpit. Yeah, I know Juan Thornhill played with a calf injury all season. So Rodney McLeod, that secondary is pretty darn good.
Yeah, not just the starters; they're backups too. I mean,
right.
They're deep at safety, they're deep at corner. Like their secondary could definitely be viewed as a strength. There's a lot of strengths on this team, like to have the second overall roster on that list. I guarantee you everyone in that top 5 has a higher over/under win than 8.5. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. You think that's another Deshaun Watson tax that we're paying there? Yeah.
It appears so.
I would think so. All right. This is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns on the chopping block before OTAs. Number 3, they go with running back Pierre Strong. Number 2, wide receiver David Bell. And number 1, Seaka Ika. I don't know that any of those guys are really in danger, Casey. Strong's a guy that they traded for. They like him. And the one thing this front office has shown with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, they're patient with guys that are young. They try to let them develop. Unlike past regimes before them, they err on the side of giving them an extra year as opposed to pulling the plug a year too soon.
Yeah, given the Chubb injury, I feel like he's safe today, but if Chubb were to come back sooner, I think Strong probably would be the odd man out, just based on what they brought in and the different roles they would fill. And I think Hines could do a lot of the quickness stuff, the return game, and the stuff that would probably push Strong out. The David Bell one's weird to me because I see him as a necessity. He's not a burner, he's not a separator, but he makes plays. He's going to be where he's supposed to be. He's a spot guy. He's going to move the chains, and sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes, you don't need the flash. Sometimes you just need a guy to consistently do his job and be where he's supposed to be. We used to, like Brian Brennan in the 80s, just a third down receiver. To me, that's the kind of role that Bell fills. So I don't see him as being in danger, although I do see him at the bottom of the order in that receiver room because of how dynamic the rest of the guys are. But the Seaka one, it's odd because if this was his third year, I would agree that he's probably the chopping block. Barry has not walked away from a pick that quickly, though. So I feel like he's still safe for another year, unless it's just an abysmal camp and he proves himself that he's not even worthy of a practice squad spot. But something short of that, I think he's just going to be one of those guys that more likely is inactive, just because of what they've added to that defensive tackle room. Now, if he makes a gargantuan leap, that's a great problem to have. But if not, they're not really counting on him. And just because it's his second year, I don't see Barry walking away quite yet.
Yeah, and I get it. David Bell is a guy that the ceiling isn't real high because he has physical limitations for an NFL wide receiver, but he catches the ball. That's kind of important.
Yeah, sometimes you need a guy just to get 4 yards when you need 3, and that's who he's going to be, I think. I think he's just going to be that consistent player who knows where his spot is, knows how to find soft holes in the zone, sit down, and make tough catches. And you need that guy, It's not sexy, and it's not going to sell tickets, but you need a guy just to move the chains, and I believe that's who David Bell is in this league.
All right, take a look at this. This is a graphic form of the years since every team's last playoff victory. And I was surprised by this. The Dolphins, 23 years since their last playoff victory. Raiders, 21. Commanders were the Redskins 18 years ago. Bears and Jets, 13. 8 for the Cardinals, Panthers, and Broncos. Browns, just 3. 3 along with the Saints. So there are actually 13 teams who have won a playoff game more recently than the Browns. And the Patriots have gone 2 years longer than the Browns since they won a playoff game. Now, Super Bowl is a different thing, but that's a playoff game.
Yeah, it just shows you, there's some names in there I wouldn't have guessed. I would not have guessed it's been 23 years since the Dolphins have won a playoff game. They've consistently been competitive, but, to see the Browns on that list, it's been 3 years. Of course, you wanted that win last year, but the fact that you've just been competitive, it just shows you where the bar is raised. To where that is the expectation now, as opposed to, for years we hung on to a 10-6 season where we didn't even make the playoffs. That was like the thing we could always point to. It's just the level of expectations. And now the expectation is to go in and win playoff games. And it feels like they fell short last year. And the expectation is I expect them to be on that list of freshly won next year.
All right, so this is interesting as well. Total mileage teams will travel in 2024. Chargers travel the most, over 26,800 miles. Dolphins, 25,869. Seahawks are third. Now, we told you how difficult the Browns' schedule is with the AFC North. Travel isn't that bad. Ravens, 15,424, 22nd. Browns, just under 14,000 miles. Steelers, just over 12,000. And the Bengals, over 10,500 miles. It's just interesting. At some point in time, if you're going, cross coast to coast, that becomes a little bit of lag. And I'm sure... I'm not sure. I would imagine that factors in with the Chargers and the Dolphins a little bit this year.
Yeah, it didn't get talked about enough because flying will wreck your body. We always point to jet lag or being off your internal clock. But if you have nagging injuries and you're already battling swelling, to be up in a pressurized cabin up in the air doesn't do you any favors. So when you land, those joints will ache more and it just kind of sets you back. So the least time you can be up in the air as humanly possible, the better. So I like seeing them towards that end of the list as opposed to the high end, which these teams out west, you constantly see them on that Miami because how far they are down on the continent, and any team that has to travel across the pond to play, those numbers get up, and that just wrecks your body. So the least amount of travel possible, that sounds good to me.
Casey Kinnaman, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnaman, make sure you check him out. Dog Pound Daily. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. No shows for us the rest of the week. We are out at the Mid-American Conference Baseball Tournament in Avon. We will also be off Monday for Memorial Day, so we will see you a week from today, Tuesday at 4. Have a great week and a great holiday weekend with Memorial Day. We'll see you next Tuesday on Sports4CLE. Have a great week, everybody.